everybody, welcome back to another Main Street Celebration Bench Pillow Along video. We are in week number 4. We're going to work on the swing and quilt block and the farmhouse block. I have all of my materials prepped and ready to go. I've got my light mesh cutaway in my 8x12 hoop. All my threads are ready. I've got them in my embroidered snap tray. I'll put a link below on how you can make that. We're going to head right over to the machine. We've done a couple videos already, so we're going to jump right in and get started. I'm on a baby lock meridian. My files are on USB. We're doing the background quilting, which I'll do off camera again, but let's go ahead and get everything loaded. Let's see if this one lines up. I need the 6x8 background quilting. Go ahead and hit set, and then I need to add my file for our block. We're going to start with the swing and quilt. Looking for the one that's got the tire swing on it right there. I'm going to go ahead and hit set, have a look at it. You can see it's not completely lined up. It's really close. We've already gone over that. I'm going to save this to my machine. I'll make any adjustments when I'm trimming the block. Let's go ahead and hit embroidery. I'm going to step through the background quilting off camera, and then I'll move through the little tick mark and the box because we're doing background quilting, and we'll start together at the tree trunk fill. Background quilting is done. I'm using the same color for my background quilting on all my blocks throughout. We're going to switch to caramel and stitch out the tree trunk fill. That's all stitched out. I'm going to switch to aloe and stitch out the placement lines for our leaves. This is just like the welcome block. You probably have 2 colors of green, and I went with the darker green. It stands out nicely against this felt. All of our placement lines are stitched out. We're going to grab our felt, make sure we get everything completely covered, add tape, stitch the tack down, and do all the trimming. And if you remember from the welcome block, they give a tip in the instructions of cutting up the middle to help make it easier to trim around all the little leaves. I think I did that last time. I'm not sure it really helped all that much, but it actually trimmed up a lot faster than I thought. There will be no decorative stitching around the leaves, but you don't have to make them perfect. Remember, this is a tree and leaves aren't perfect, so just trim them up nice and neat. I've got all the leaves trimmed. I already put the color black on my machine. We're going to stitch out the placement line for the tire swing. We've got our black embroidery leather. If this is your first time watching one of these videos and using embroidery leather, it's a PVC product. It's plastic. It's not an animal product. Go ahead and place that. Make sure we cover the placement lines. We're going to tack it down and trim. We need to trim out the center of the tire. I did the outside using the double curve applique scissors. These are a little big. I'm going to try to use the snips, and what I think I'm going to try to do is get a hole in the center and then get it toward the edge. Let's see if we can't get this trimmed up. I can feel I've got like the top layer of the leather. I don't think I've gone all the way through, but you also don't want to put a hole in your fabric underneath. You can see underneath. I'm going to go ahead and switch to these. They're a little sharper. I'm going to go ahead and set this on a table and do the rest of this off camera. I've got that trimmed. We're going to switch to sterling, and we're going to stitch out the tire tread details. Sterling is the silvery gray color. All stitched out. The next thing we're going to stitch out is the rope detail. It has that in one of the yellows. I'm going to pick the darker of the 2 yellows that I'm using. I'm using this in place of Glide Jubilee. Next, we're going to work on the rocket. We've stitched out quite a few of these, so I'm going to run all of this together. For my red, I'm using the darker red that I've picked. I've been using this throughout for the rocket. The rocket fuse stitches first, then white for the spark, and then they have us switching to red for the placement line and placing the rocket body glitter, which I talked about last time. I accidentally used red the first time I did that. I used this for the rocket body and the white for the tip. I'm going to actually continue to do that. I did say that last time, but I just want to repeat it. If you want it to look like the picture, rocket body is in white, tip is in red. I just happen to reverse them. I think it looks fine. Remember to peel off your plastic from your vinyl before you place any of your vinyl, and do the color placement that you want for these. But since we've stitched out I think at least 4 of these rockets. I'm going to go ahead and run this all together. That way we're working on things that are different through all the videos. So if you want to see the rockets stitched out a little slower, go to one of the earlier videos. The rocket is all stitched out. Remember to heat set your vinyl. Cover it with a pressing cloth, put a warm iron on it, heat set that vinyl. The next few steps we've also done before. We're going to stitch out the red firework and star detail first. I'm going to use my bright red this time. I used the bright red on the fire station block and I haven't used it since for the fireworks, so I want to incorporate that again. After the red is the white fireworks detail. And then next is yellow. I've been mixing it up with my yellows. I'm going to use the bright yellow this time instead of the darker yellow. And then after that, we're stitching out the eyelets. I'm using my dark navy for that. We've done all of this before. I'm going to go ahead and set all of that to music, stitch out the fireworks, and then we'll go ahead and move on to our next block. The swinging quilt block is all stitched out. We're going to move to the farmhouse block. When I look at my instructions, included in the farmhouse block are the dimensional pennants. This is my Baby Lock Pathfinder. This was the second embroidery machine that I purchased. The first one I purchased only did a 4x4 hoop size. And I did not understand that when you wanted to make something bigger, you just couldn't buy a bigger hoop for the machine. I didn't know that. So this was the second machine that I purchased. I believe it goes up to an 8x12. It's a very good embroidery machine. I went ahead and put the dimensional pennants on the machine. Let's go ahead and bring that up. I saved it to the machine memory. This file right here. We're ready to go with that. I'm going to use a 5x7 hoop. I actually do not have a 4x4 hoop for this. The dimensional pennants are stitched out in this red embroidery leather. It says to use a neutral thread color. I'm actually going to use my dark red. I think that looks the best. The bright red was too bright for it. We're going to stitch out the placement line for the dimensional pennants. Go ahead and cover the placement line with your embroidery leather. Add some tape, and then we're going to stitch the tack down and then trim. These are all stitched out. We have to trim these out individually. When you go to trim these, we're trimming just inside the pennant outline. We'll be cutting off the thread stitches. Let's go ahead and get our farmhouse block loaded. We need the same background quilting file, and then we'll load our block. That loaded, and then add the block. This one right here is the farmhouse. Looks like it's got a stalk of corn off to the side. Big fireworks here, little yellow ones up here. Let's go ahead and get that loaded. And you can also see the detail right here. That's where that pennant banner is going to go. I'm going to save it to my machine just in case. I'll go ahead and stitch out the background quilting, skip through those first 2 steps, and then we'll get started on this block together. The background quilting is done. We're ready to get started. The first thing we're going to stitch out is the house placement line. It has us stitching that in a neutral thread. I'm going to go ahead and leave my dark blue navy thread on my machine. You want to grab your house fabric and cover the placement line. The house fabric is that white dot on white, fusible on the back. Make sure you've got it right set up. Check underneath, make sure there's nothing underneath that you'll see through. Go ahead and tape that in place. We're going to stitch the tack down and then trim everything outside the tack down line. I've got that trimmed. We're going to stitch out the placement line for the gable fabric. The gable fabric has the linen texture to it. Same thing we just did below. Cover the placement line, add a piece of tape, stitch the tack down, and then trim. That's all trimmed. Next we're going to stitch out the roof placement line. We'll place our roof fabric, stitch the tack down, and trim. I'm going to go ahead and run that together. The roof is done. The next thing we're going to stitch out is the door placement line. We'll place our door fabric, tack it down, and trim. I'm going to go ahead and run all of that together. This is a really long block. Things that we've done several times before, I'm going to run together so it goes a little faster for everyone. Next, we're going to stitch out the window placement lines. Put down our window fabric, tape it, tack it down, and trim. Once you've got that trimmed, switch to the color white. We're going to stitch out the house satin outline. Once you've stitched that out, you want to switch to the color sterling. We're going to stitch out the door satin outline. We're going to switch to black and stitch out the doorknob. We're going to switch back to sterling and stitch out the siding details. And leave sterling on your machine, and we're going to stitch out the eaves fill. The next thing we're going to stitch out are the porch pillars fill. They show that in yellow. I'm going to use this darker yellow. It's the one I'm using for Jubilee. I'm going to switch to camel and stitch out the roof satin outline. Going to switch to white and stitch out the gable satin outline. We're going to stitch out the windows satin outlines here and here. I'm going to use the same color I used for the pillars. Going to switch to white and stitch the satin outline on the door window. Next is the vinyl, which I've been skipping. If you're not skipping your vinyl, go ahead and place your vinyl. Make sure to cover all 3 of those windows, tape it in place, stitch the tack down, and then trim the vinyl. I'm going to move through that step, and then I'm going to get sterling on my machine. We're going to stitch the porch swing cable detail. Going to switch to caramel, and we're going to stitch out the porch swing fill. We're going to switch to sterling and stitch out the foundation fill. I've got the color black on my machine. We're going to stitch out the dimensional Pennants placement line. We've got all the little lines here. It tells us to take our pennants, placing them right side down with the bottom edge covering the placement line, tape in place. They're going to point to the top of the house. Cover the placement line right side down. So right side is the red leather, right side down. Tape in place, and then we're going to stitch a tack down line. So I would tape it up near the top. You don't want to tape it near the bottom because then you'll have to pick out your tape. So I need to place the rest of these and tape them. All taped, I'm going to stitch the tack down lines. Once they're tacked down, we need to remove the tape, and then we have to flip them right side up. Do this gently. The back of this leather is kind of fuzzy. You don't just want to rip it. You might damage it. So peel your tape off gently, and then we're going to flip them so they're right side up. All tape removed. I have fresh tape over here on my hand. We're going to flip them over like that, and it tells us to tape them at the bottom. We're going to do that to all of our little pennants. It's taped. I'm going to slide that back onto my machine, and we're going to stitch out the dimensional pennant tack down and rope detail stitch. I would highly recommend sitting here and watching this because we flip these over. They all have kind of a little bump, especially this one here because it goes over the satin stitching. I'm a little worried about the presser foot getting caught. Keep an eye on your machine. That's all stitched out. I need to remove the tape. One thing I noticed about that is I don't know why they had us stitch that in black. I really don't like it in black. I think it would have done better with brown or yellow or gray. It looks a little bit harsh to me in the black, but it's stitched out now. I'm not changing it. Next, going to switch to aloe. It's the darker of the 2 greens, and we're going to stitch out the back corn husk fill. We're going to switch to yellow and stitch out the corn cob fill. I'm going to use my brighter yellow. This is the one I'm using in place of buttercup. Switch to white to stitch out the corn silk fringe. It tells us to change our bobbin to colored bobbin thread. My machine likes 90 weight bobbin thread. That's what's in there. I can't switch it to a colored bobbin thread, but what I do have is water soluble thread. I have Vanish Light by Superior Threads. I'm going to put this in my bobbin. It should work the same as flipping your piece to the back and snipping bobbin stitches. You can always watch my stitch out and make sure it works before you decide what you want to do. We only have a few more steps left in the stitch out. I've got my water soluble thread on my bobbin loaded, white thread on the machine. We're going to stitch out the corn silk fringe. That's all stitched out. I'm going to take this off, put my regular bobbin thread back in. If you switch to colored bobbin thread, make sure you do the same. Take that out and get your regular bobbin back on your machine. Going to put the color Aloe back on my machine. We're going to stitch out the corn stalk and the front corn husk fill. Going to switch to the lighter green. This is the color I'm using. It's Glide Avocado, and we're going to stitch out the husk and leaf details. We're all done with the corn stalk. The next 4 steps I'm going to run together. We've got red stars and fireworks, white fireworks detail, yellow fireworks detail, and then the eyelets. For the yellow, I am using the color that I'm substituting for Jubilee. For the red, I'm going to go with the darker red today, which is what I'm using in place of Candy Apple. We're all done with this stitch out. We need to trim our blocks, dissolve that water soluble thread, and if you haven't heat set your vinyl on the other block, make sure to do that. Let's head over to the table. We'll take care of the trimming and the water soluble thread. I have both my blocks out of the hoop. I've heat set my vinyl. Let's start by dissolving the water soluble bobbin thread. I'm going to flip this over to the back. I have a cotton swab, glass of water. I'm just going to put some water on the cotton swab and rub just like this. When the bobbin thread dissolves, you should start seeing little loops of stitches. I've had to get this pretty wet. Let's flip it around to the front. These should be loose. I'm just going to use the other end of the cotton swab. Yep, you can see they're starting to pop out, making a fringe. It's kind of hard to see while I'm working on it. It looks okay. I think if I made another one of these, since I can't use a different weight bobbin thread in my bobbin, I probably would just skip this step and I would just leave it off. They do look fuzzy though. We need to go ahead and trim these. They're going to trim to 8.5 by 6.5. I'm going to grab my orange pop rulers and trim. Rotating cutting mat, 6.5 by 8.5 orange pop ruler, the larger ruler on the outside. I have to measure here. My stitching line is right about there. I think I'm going to have to come up just a bit. Yep, I need to make sure I'm at 1/4 inch since I did the background quilting and it doesn't completely line up correctly. That looks good. Get my stitching. Here's my stitching on the side here. Stitching on the side here. That looks good. Get that tin. Put that down to help hold it in place. Remember to cut all the way over to the side. Keep your hands out of the way. Let's trim our block. Let's get the next block. I did buy Kimberbell's rotating cutting mat. It's on sale for Kimberbell Day. I think it's on sale all week. I'll make sure to drop a link for that below. It's shaped to fit the orange pop rulers. I'm going to line up the sides, get my ruler, find my 1/4 inch. We want 1/4 inch from the bottom of the tree. Make sure everything else is nice and straight. Looks good. I'm going to trim this block. Here's both of our blocks. They came out great. When this goes into the quilt, it's going to be like this with this block here and this block here. And the little mini quilt looks like it hangs from the tree and then comes across and will go here. Just finished week 4. We stitched out our swinging quilt and the farmhouse block. Next week for week 5, we have 1 block to stitch out, the windmill block, and we're going to work on the borders. After that, we're going to put together our bench pillow and add our embellishments. I am using crystals in place of fairy lights. We'll see how that works out. Then when this is done, done, we can start working on our Autumn Acres bench pillow. Please be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends. If you decide to purchase the Main Street Celebration bench pillow or any Kimberbell products after watching my videos, I ask that you please consider using the links below. I get a small commission, but more important, it lets Kimberbell know people are watching and enjoying my content. That helps bring more wonderful projects like this to the channel. There's also a link below to my private Facebook group. I hope to see you there. Make sure you come back next week for week 5 of the Main Street Celebration bench pillow along. I'll see you then. Bye everybody!